Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session, How to Build a Winning Event Strategy for 2026. I am Camille Arnold. I'm part of the marketing team here at Cvent, where I get to work with some of the most creative and data-driven event marketers in the world. If you're not familiar, our tools help you simplify your processes, amplify your brand, measure your results, all to grow your business through events. And if this is not your first rodeo with Cvent, you already know the entire end-to-end journey for today's event is powered by Cvent. So that means the registration page that you RSVP'd on, all the pre-event reminder emails that you received, and even this virtual experience in Cvent webinar, they're all a part of our platform. So be sure to use all of our engagement features for today, like our chat, polls, Q&A. We will make a time for that at the end. And let me know if you have any questions about Cvent along the way. All right. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about how to assess where your event strategy stands, how to identify the biggest opportunities to grow in 2026, and practical steps to map out your event plan for the next year. And like I said, we'll leave some time for questions at the end, so feel free to ask whatever is top of mind for you. And my hope is that you walk away with a framework to elevate your current approach, get some guidance on how to prioritize formats and resources for maximum ROI, and just have a clearer next step to create a measurable, scalable plan for next year. So grab your goggles, we're diving in, folks. All right. Let's take a second to vote on our first poll today, and no judgment here. This is really just for you to get a sense of where you stand heading into 2026. So whether you're feeling confident or cautious, today will give you a roadmap to strengthen the connection between your events and business outcomes. So let's see if we're getting some poll responses here. We've got a mixed bag, and I like to see that. There's a spectrum here. Some folks are feeling very confident. It looks like majority of you are feeling somewhat confident. All right, that's better than not confident at all. Although if that is you, don't worry. All hope is not lost quite yet. And if you don't quite have a defined strategy, that's okay. You can still get a lot of value from this session. All right. So if you have been in events or marketing for a while, you know the game keeps changing, right? And heading into 2026, a lot of us are probably still going to see tight budgets, more scrutiny on ROI, and higher expectations from attendees. So whether you're in technology, finance, healthcare, or education, wants to see the same thing, which is proof that events drive results. And yet so many teams are struggling to do that, or they get stuck in what I call the flagship trap. And they pour most of their time, budget, and energy into just one or two marquee events each year. Meanwhile, they're missing the boat. They're missing out on the chance to use smaller, more strategic programs to drive results all year long. So if you've attended a past session or webinar on the power of event-led growth, this slide might be familiar to you. It illustrates that flagship trap really well. So let me explain quickly. The best teams today think about events in portfolios, not one-offs. And they run a diverse set of event programs that engage the different segments of their audience year-round, from VIP dinners and workshops to webinars or community meetups. They still prioritize their larger annual flagship or tentpole events like conferences or summits, but all of their events are connected by a clear strategy tied to tangible business outcomes. So they're not just running events, they're running an event-led growth engine. So let's just quickly level set to make sure we're all on the same page here. If you're not familiar with the term, event-led growth, or ELG, is a go-to-market motion that uses events as its primary customer acquisition and retention channel. So think scaled event programs that serve as multi-channel campaigns, I should say, not siloed tactics. And the result, as I said, is measurable business impact. So the results really speak for themselves. Companies that are embracing an event-led growth approach are growing faster and they're meeting their targets more consistently, which is incredibly validating to see, especially when we survey marketing organizations and across different industries. There we go. So I get asked frequently, how do I know if event-led growth is right for my team or my organization? And I would say the first thing is that you need to be clear on what the prerequisites are. You need to understand what your team is committing to. And that first commitment is one to measuring event success. And I don't mean the basics here. This means going beyond just tracking metrics like the number of registrations or attendance rates. And this connects to our second commitment, which is you need to get a handle on attribution, especially if you don't already have a model that proves the value and gives your events credit for things like revenue generation. Third, I would say, is an investment in the right technology that enables the kind of scale that you need to, require by ELG. So without this, you'll run into so many roadblocks. You really won't be able to implement event-led growth without the right technology platform. And the fourth commitment, which is also a beautiful benefit and kind of forcing function of event-led growth, which is internal alignment. Event-led growth is a team sport. It goes beyond just marketing. So you need to make sure that you have that cross-functional alignment. And the truth is that if you can't commit to these things, your organization might not quite be ready for event-led growth, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to work towards an event-led growth strategy. And the reality is that if you can commit, you don't have to worry about nailing the most sophisticated ELG strategy right out of the gate. Think about and aim for progress over time. So what could that look like? Well, I'm so glad you asked. And if you are dropping questions in the chat, I see you and I will get to them in a minute. Let's actually maybe just take a little quick check here. Okay, we did have a relevant question from Patrick. Thank you for chiming in. Could you expound on what attribution means in this context? Absolutely. In this context, what we want to make sure we have in place is a model or a mechanism where events get credit for things like revenue generation, as I said, or other progress towards your growth goals. That might be engagement within a certain audience or segment, but whatever the case may be, whatever your goals are, you want to make sure that your events are getting credit for them. And there are certain ways that you would need to work with either your revenue operations team, it might be just marketing operations or finance, to set up the tracking mechanisms so that you are getting credit for, let's say your team wants to generate more marketing qualified leads to hand over to sales through an event program. So that means, you need to get credit for those marketing qualified leads, those MQLs that are going through your funnel and being passed over to sales. And if you don't see that stamp in your CRM, right, attached to that MQL that says this person who MQL'd attended this event, then you're not getting that credit, and therefore you don't have the right attribution model in place. Patrick, I hope that explains your question, but maybe we can deep dive a little bit more later. Leslie, I see your question about platforms. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's keep it moving because I want to get in a bit of an assessment mode with all of you today. So let's keep it moving. We're going to get a little diagnostic, as I said. as I said, and assess, because before we plan our 2026 strategy, we need to know where we're starting from. And at Cvent, we use a 5-stage maturity model for event-led growth to help teams benchmark their ELG strategy. So let's start to unpack that together. With years of testing and validating through Cvent's own ELG strategy, and of course, over 25 years of supporting literally thousands of customers in their efforts to unlock event-led growth, we've synthesized an ELG maturity framework that breaks down the process of going from no strategy to one that's considered best in class. So this is the framework. It's meaty. Don't worry. We've got 6 categories here: audience targeting and reach, channel and content optimization, engagement and insights, technology and analytics, brand and partner ecosystem, and then ROI and attribution. And each of these categories can range from stage 1, no strategy, to stage 5, which would be considered advanced and optimized. So at stage 1, events are run mostly in silos. They're usually disconnected from larger business goals, and they can often even be executed spontaneously. You might see that you have a webinar here and a trade show there, but there's no shared purpose or consistent brand experience. And success is usually measured by attendance instead of outcomes. So for planners, this usually means last minute sourcing, especially when we talk about the spontaneous kind of ad hoc events that pop up. So last minute sourcing, inconsistent processes, and no clear sense of how to measure ROI. And then for marketers, it means they can't connect events to things like pipeline or retention or expansion. So it's a lot of activity without alignment, or you could think of it as a lot of motion, but not so much momentum. And there's really little to no audience targeting or segmentation. Your data tracking is not really existent, and your brand consistency is all over the place when it comes to your different event programs or even touch points. You're probably not even running programs at this point, I should say, just one-off ad hoc events. And teams at stage 1 with no strategy, they tend to be more reactive, lots of incoming requests from other teams internally. If that sounds familiar, throw something in the chat to know that you can relate. And the other challenges of this stage are usually that event promotion ends up being pretty limited and generic, email blasts, things like that. And so while these teams may invest in a handful of events each year, there's rarely a cohesive plan for who they're trying to reach, what success looks like, or how they'll measure it. So you're basically throwing spaghetti at the wall and just hoping and praying that something will stick. And because ROI is nearly impossible to prove at this stage, these programs actually face the greatest risk. I'm talking about budget cuts, reduced headcount, and of course, fading executive confidence. Because without a clear strategy, events are just seen as a cost center instead of growth drivers. So at stage 2, this is where teams start building foundational structure, but the strategy can still be a bit patchy because it's still emerging. You'll typically see some early segmentation of the audience here, so that allows you to start to get some targeting in place. Maybe you're sending different pre and post-event emails to prospects versus customers, for example, or using dedicated landing pages for different events. But it's still pretty broad, your strategy, and not yet tied to personas or industries, account tiers, or revenue funnel stages. So promotion usually relies on 1 or 2 main channels here, usually email, maybe your website, maybe there's one social push, but the content's pretty generic. And, things are working, but they're not highly targeted or attuned to your different audience segments' needs and expectations. You're still operating a little bit more in the one size fits all-ish model. And then on the insight side, teams are starting to track some basic metrics, registration, attendance. Maybe there are some post-event surveys that you're sending, and that's getting you some additional things to track and measure success. But they're not yet capturing intent signals from attendees or behavioral data that would really help teams like sales or customer success, or even maybe your product team take the next step in their work. And then from a technology perspective, there's usually a standalone registration system in place, but data often ends up living in spreadsheets. Yikes! And, that means a lot of manual updates in your CRM or your marketing automation platform once the event is over. At this point, branding does start to become a little bit more consistent. So you'll see things like teams using templates or, brand standards are emerging across events, but execution can vary, whether it's across business units or regions, or sometimes even just event programs. And your partnerships exist when we think about a partner ecosystem that you can fuel through events. It exists, but it's really just opportunistic and not strategic. So you might not have the right partners in place. You just have any partners that you can kind of get your hands on. And when we think about attribution, stage 2 teams are tracking early indicators, like I said, attendance, satisfaction scores, but they're still struggling to connect events directly to other really important business metrics. And for you, that might be pipeline or adoption or, customer retention, as just a few examples. So as I said, this stage is really all about putting in early structure. Some things are probably working, but they're not fully connected yet. And your teams are feeling the momentum, but you don't have a repeatable system yet with a clear sense of ROI. And this is where a lot of organizations actually get stuck before they evolve into a truly strategic ELG motion. So what does stage 3 look like? Well, this is where you really start to feel the shift from execution to strategy. So that looks like audience targeting getting sharper. You're segmenting maybe by persona or industry or potentially life cycle stage, and your messaging and your experiences reflect that. And then events are, really run as coordinated campaigns, and your content is aligned across your channels. So all of this means ultimately that you're capturing real attendee signals. That could be session behavior and feedback. It could be engagement patterns at an in-person event. And all of this data can flow into your CRM and your marketing automation platform. When we think about brand is really important when it comes to events. And events also are hugely important for, growing and building brand. Your branding for your events at this stage, they should feel more consistent, and your partnerships should start to make sense. Maybe you have 1 or 2 strategic partnerships in place. Maybe the rest are opportunistic, but things are starting to move in the right direction. You're starting to finally show some early impact on like I said, those business metrics that matter most to your organization. Like I said, it could be pipeline, it could be, new logos added. It could be that you have just an amazing customer expansion motion now. But stage 3 is the tipping point where teams move beyond just running events to starting to leverage events as a strategic growth motion. So stage 4, all right, this is where things get really, really good. Everything is connected at this point, and you can really start to achieve scale. When we think about audience targeting, you're taking everything to the next level. So that could look like targeting by, persona-led and account-led. Whatever the case, your messaging is 100% tailored, and the content is all tailored, not generic. All of your promotional channels are working together. So like I said before, at stage 3, events are starting to become a real channel where you can think of them as integrated campaigns. At stage 4, that's your reality. So, an event campaign is going to hit all of your key channels that you would for any integrated campaign: email, website, sales outreach. If you have a sales team and that's, how you're growing your business, that could look like paid digital, of course, organic social, and content marketing. All of these areas are aligned behind the same story. And that leads to deeper engagement with your target audience. And then from that engagement, you're taking those insights and you're fueling the rest of your marketing strategy and your go-to-market motion. So you're closing feedback loops and just improving continuously. And all of this is enabled with your tech stack, which is optimized for the latest integrations. And you have now replaced your manual tasks with automated workflows. What that frees up when you get all of that time back from not having to do so much manual work means, guess what? You can invest more in making sure that you have more of the right partnerships in place. No more opportunistic partnerships, all strategic ones, and making sure that your brand experience is truly unified across every single event and touch point. Most importantly, I would say maybe you're tracking real business outcomes. So, that could look like pipeline sourced or influenced. Maybe you're paying attention to deal acceleration, or product adoption and retention lift. So the point is, if you can make it to stage 4, you are ready for the big leagues. So what are the big leagues? Stage 5. This is best in class. This is where events truly become a growth engine for your organization and an unstoppable one. So you're using intent data and predictive insights to target the right people with the right experiences at the right time. And then your event content becomes a flywheel. So every event can produce weeks or even months of multi-purpose material. Your engagement strategy is highly personalized, automated, and informed by real-time data. We love it. It's just a beautiful thing to see. And then you have AI helping you analyze not only event performance and program performance, but help you optimize those outcomes to the business, and then even be able to forecast impact. So at this point, when we think about brand and partner ecosystem, everything's unified and incredibly influential. So at this point, your events are fueling content, marketing, maybe even your sales and CX motions, and your partner strategy. So from an ROI and attribution perspective, you have crystal clear multi-touch attribution. Multi-touch means different touch points are going to be weighted differently, right? And that if that's possible for your organization, I highly recommend going in that direction, because, engaging with an ebook from an email nurture, is that really should that hold the same weight as showing up to a VIP dinner or attending an annual user conference, or maybe being a repeat attendee and attending several events across a month or a given quarter? I don't think so. I think that the event activity should be weighted a little bit more. But that's what I mean by multi-touch attribution, so that you can prove the revenue impact from all of your events. And this is the gold standard where, events are creating, as I said, just unstoppable momentum for your organization. So I am checking on the chat here. Ooh, lots of convo. Helena saying we don't have multi-touch attribution yet, so we track an influencer metric within Salesforce. I love that. Yep. So that if someone has SQL'd from an event or webinar, but it's still a manual process for ops. Ooh, I hear you. We should talk more. And I want to help your marketing ops people. Like they need a break. That sounds painful. But I do want to get another quick poll going here because I know that I just threw a lot at you, but let's do a quick check-in. Hopefully I've got your wheels turning. I think from the chatter in the chat that there are some wheels turning, which is a good sign. But I'm curious where you all sit today. And if you could just vote on this poll, which area of your event strategy do you think needs the most improvement? Is it audience targeting, channel and content optimization? Are you thinking about your tech stack and the data visibility or the challenges there? Maybe you're just like, we cannot figure out measurement and ROI, or really concerned about brand consistency and partnerships. I'm just curious where everyone is kind of what you are focused on today. Okay, so people are still voting, but I'm seeing majority of people saying that measurement and ROI is in need of the most improvement. And that's not surprising and also super helpful. Thank you so much for sharing. It's usually a tie, I would say, between tech stack and measurement. Which is why in the next section, we're going to focus on how to move from where you are now to where you want to go. So, oh, and by the way, I know this is a meaty slide deck, and we'll make sure that it's available for you at the end of the session. Fret not. I know what it's like to be sitting in a session like this and you're just drinking from the fire hose, but you want to go back and reference things afterwards. We've got you covered. Okay, so let's talk about leveling up your event strategy. No matter the size of your organization, your industry, your event budget, the path from busy event calendar to revenue driving program follows 4 core pillars. So let's get into them. The first pillar is to align goals to business priorities. If your company's priority is efficiency, let's say, then your event strategy could focus on customer retention, product adoption, or renewals. Let's say your company's chasing growth. Maybe then your strategy could focus on pipeline acceleration and driving net new demand. You don't need, in either case, you don't need a million events. You need the right events that match your objectives. So here are a few examples. A healthcare company focused on efficiency might decide to invest in education and compliance-driven workshops. A financial services brand might use executive roundtables to strengthen relationships with key accounts. And an association might focus on member engagement through micro events and webinars. Let's think about a few more examples. If you're still trying to, you've been given this directive, you need to drive efficiency. Let's say you're in government or education. For you, efficiency might mean consolidating vendors or standardizing workflows. And if you're in SaaS or finance, it might mean just accelerating pipeline, like I said, with like a VIP roundtable or some sort of white glove, high touch experience. These are all different goals, but really the same principle. It's about putting your strategy before just building out your schedule or calendar of events. So that's the first pillar, aligning your event goals to business priorities. The second pillar is build repeatable systems. Every great event program runs on templates and playbooks and Dunkin' Donuts. No, I'm just kidding. But you really want to create standard processes for registration, comms, and post-event follow-up through your templates and playbooks. So your team doesn't have to reinvent the wheel every single time you spin up a new event. And this frees you and your team up to focus on creativity and impact, not just logistics and manual tasks. Okay. The third pillar is leveraging technology and data, because the best programs use event data as fuel. That means your CRM and event platform need to be integrated and connected, probably also with your marketing automation platform too. that also means that you can track and score attendee engagement, and you know which events actually drive things like pipeline or renewals or adoption, whatever those business priorities are, right? And if your data lives in spreadsheets, let me just tell you, you are missing out on so much. There's probably so much opportunity for you to not only improve your event strategy, but improve, therefore, I would say, the results from your events. So get out of living in spreadsheets. I would say at Cvent, we've seen teams save literally hundreds of hours a year just by connecting their registration data directly into their CRM and marketing automation platform. And what that unlocks is data visibility, and it allows teams beyond just marketing to act fast and act in a smarter way, act in a more personalized way. So this is really important to leverage technology and data. The fourth pillar is to measure and share success. Now, this might seem like I'm being Captain Obvious over here, but it's true that the work doesn't stop when the event ends, and the real magic is in reporting. So share your wins and your learnings early and often, and show how each program contributes to awareness or pipeline or retention, whatever you're driving towards. When you communicate your impact, you're essentially, proactively protecting your budget and your influence. And as my dear friend Perry Piep says in our event-led growth masterclass, the event after the event is reporting. So it's really true. If leadership doesn't see the impact, the success story ends with you. And what a shame that would be. So let's get our third poll launched here. Before we move into a quick self-assessment exercise, what is your biggest barrier to scaling your event strategy today? Would you say that it is lack of budget or resources, or limited tech and data visibility? Maybe you're just really struggling still with siloed teams or processes, or unclear goals or KPI. I'm really curious to hear what is the biggest pain point for you right now. I would say every team faces at least one of these. And honestly, this is where, strategy earns its keep. And it gives you a framework to overcome what's holding you back. So let's see how y'all are feeling. Okay, biggest barriers. Ooh, it's pretty split. But so far, majority is saying siloed teams or processes. That can be such a challenge. I really understand, which is why I think when you can lean into the templates, the playbooks, like I said, you start to overcome some of those challenges of having really siloed teams or processes. Okay, well, thank you for humoring me with the polls. I want to keep it moving, because I am anticipating lots of questions and I want to have time for that. Let's put that framework to work with a quick reflection exercise. Okay, pop quiz time. I know you weren't ready for this. Surprise. I'm just kidding, but grab a notebook or open a blank document on your computer if you can. And I want you to write down the 6 categories from our maturity model. Don't worry, I'm going to put them up on the screen for you. I don't expect you to remember them already. Here is just a quick refresher for you. Here we go. Quick refresher for you on the full model. Okay, we'll give you 7 seconds to take that in, and then I will put the categories on the slide for you. Okay, that's our model. And here are our framework categories. So write these 6 categories down. If you want to do shorthand, you can. Your assignment, are you ready? It's to rate each one of these categories from 1 to 5. Not too hard. 1 means you're starting from scratch or don't really have a handle on that area. And 5 means you're fully optimized. Like, you guys are rocking and rolling, things are looking good. So once you've done that, let me know. Maybe someone put a thumbs up in the chat. I'll give you a second. I wish I had some background music to play right now. What would I play? Maybe a little Taylor Swift. Actually, I would play Wicked. That's what I would play. Happy Wicked Week to all who celebrate. Okay. Well, hopefully you've got these 6 categories written down and you've now rated them from 1 to 5. Like I said, 1 meaning you're starting from scratch. You don't have really kind of anything in place or you don't have a handle on that. 5 meaning you're fully optimized. Things are looking good. Now, which 2 are the lowest? Circle them or put a star next to them. Something, don't forget, because those are your biggest opportunities for 2026. The 2 areas that scored the lowest, those are where I would recommend you lean in the most for 2026. That doesn't mean you don't make improvements in other areas, but in terms of prioritization, that could give you a pretty solid guide of how to get from where you are today to that next level of maturity. And hopefully you can walk away with, like I said, just clear focus on where to start and where to invest your time and energy. Okay, friends, let's get into our next segment here. Now that you've assessed where you stand and you've identified 2 opportunity areas to really invest in for 2026, here's how we're going to turn insight into action. So I like to think about this as a 3-part planning sprint. The first part is to audit your maturity and identify 2 to 3 key growth areas. So good news, you just did that. We love it. And, at least you have a first pass, right? I would say you could probably, you could and probably should align with the right stakeholders in your organization to make sure that you're on the same page about those growth areas. Okay. The second part of this planning sprint is to analyze your event programs against business goals. I know I've talked a lot about this today, but one of the challenges that I hear from people who are maybe not at stage 1, but they're really struggling to get from stage 2 to stage 3 and beyond, because they're maybe running a lot of events, investing in a lot of events, but there's no real method to the madness. There's no real clear ties to business goals. And therefore, it's really hard to, figure out which programs or which events we should continue to do and invest in, and which ones we need to scale back on or change or optimize, right? When you can't tie your events to business goals, how do you know which ones you should continue to do, right? I don't think the answer is, well, we're just going to keep doing what we've always done. I don't think that's the answer. So I would say you need to take the time to map your event programs against business goals. And if something is not aligning, then I would question, do we really need to invest in this event program or this one-off event? Hopefully you're not doing one-off events anymore at stage 2. But I think that's, I would push back, especially on people who in your organization who are really comfortable with the status quo and really uncomfortable with change. One way to get them to change is by going through that exercise. Like I said, map your event programs to business goals. If a program or an event can't be mapped to a goal, have a conversation about why you would do that event or invest in that program. And then the third part of this planning sprint is to align your teams by creating repeatable align your teams through clear playbooks and a really intentional event calendar for 2026. So like I said, we're not just doing events for the sake of doing events. Every event has a business purpose, and you don't need to boil the ocean. You really just need like a 90-day roadmap that drives visible results. Okay. So wherever you are on your journey of event-led growth, if you're just getting started or you're looking to level up and want to make sure you have a truly sophisticated ELG motion, I highly recommend that you take this ELG growth, this event-led growth maturity quiz. It's super fast to take. It's free, and it'll give you the insight that you need to assess how event-led your organization is today. It takes you a step beyond that quick self-assessment exercise we just did. And then from there, you'll be empowered to make a plan to get to that next level of maturity, which is going to be a win for your organization and a win for your career, quite honestly. So you can scan this QR code or take a picture or something, or visit our resources page at cvent.com, and you can access this quiz. And then the second resource I wanted to share with you, if this has got your wheels turning and you're hoping to either, like Patrick, maybe understand attribution and ROI a little bit more, or you want to really dig into how to, like, a little bit more of the science and math behind how to build an events calendar that is mapped to business goals and outcomes, we have a really incredible course for you to take. And I have a special surprise that we're going to give it to you for free. It's usually not for free, but we have a discount code for you for showing up today. It's our event-led growth masterclass and certification. And it is designed to teach you how to build a revenue generating event strategy in about 18 on-demand video lessons that are honestly very fun to watch. You can take it at your own pace, anytime, anywhere, and it'll give you the blueprint in far more depth than we were able to cover today, so that you can learn actionable skills to measure, analyze, and optimize your event performance. So we're going to send this out in our post-webinar recap email. But this is a fantastic resource. And like I said, it's great for you. You can share it with your team. You could share the discount code with your team, get everybody certified in event-led growth, and watch how your events start to really move the needle for your business. Okay, we've come to the point in today's session where we're ready to open up for questions. So if you haven't already, go ahead and drop your questions in the Q&A tab, and we can get into what are your most pressing. Ooh, I'm sorry, I'm just seeing the chat. I'm glad that you are excited for the course, and it's free. Like, why not? Free education, a free certification. You can also throw that on your LinkedIn profile, get that badge that you are certified in event-led growth. And we'll share out both of those resources. And I'm glad to see that some of you are excited. Okay, we've got our first question here. Okay, so first question, what are some examples of small but high ROI events you've seen work best for B2B marketers? Okay. In general, I'm not knocking large flagship or tentpole events. Those are really incredible brand building, brand defining moments. If you have the budget and the resources and the means and the audience engagement to do that, do it. That being said, those kinds of events really only engage your audience a handful of days out of the year, right? Even if you're hosting a multi-day summit or conference, what are you doing to engage your audience the other 362 days a year, right? So I love this question because you're thinking, you inherently know the value of those smaller repeatable events. The ones that I think work the best, if we're just going to think, you said for B2B marketers, if we're going to think about a revenue funnel, I would say at the top of the funnel, you can do thought leadership webinars or virtual experiences. Those are cost effective. You're not going to be constrained by geography or location. And you can get really, really targeted in your outreach and promotion. So you're getting the right people in the room whether you're using intent data from a platform like Sction or demand-based, but you're getting the right people in the room and you're educating them and kind of pushing them through the funnel. At the middle of the funnel, I would say like a hands-on workshop, and that could be in person or virtual, but give an experience to the people that are in the middle of the funnel that is just a pure value add. Don't ask too much from them at that point. Just provide value. That could be continued education on the thought leadership topic from that TOFU webinar, or it could be specific to your product or your services. But I love doing a hands-on workshop where you're teaching people something new or helping them level up or, be more successful in their roles. And then bottom of the funnel, I love an intimate, like 20 people or less in person, white glove, high touch experience. That could be like a seated dinner with guided or moderated discussion at like a Michelin star restaurant. That could be some other kind of experiential activation where you're taking people on like a sensory journey. But I just think like small, highly experiential. You don't need to be super focused on like salesy conversations at this point, I think, because an event at the bottom of the funnel for someone who's hopefully about to become a customer, they've probably, let's say you're a B2B SaaS marketer to be specific, they've probably already had a demo of your product at this point. They probably already know what your brand is known for in terms of like thought leadership, and they just need to be pushed over the finish line. And so I think those kinds of events, I like to call them closing events or landing events. They help you land those deals or help sales land those deals. And it's really just about solidifying relationships at that point, because they need to know that you're going to be a trusted partner. And as we all know, people buy from people they trust at the end of the day. So those are 3 formats that I love when I'm really trying to plan for those small, high ROI moments throughout the funnel. Okay, let's go on to our next question here. What metrics do you recommend tracking if you're just getting serious about event attribution? Great question. I think to get started, and I think hopefully this is obvious, we're going beyond if we're going to really unlock event attribution and ROI, we need to go beyond things like attendance, right, and registration. So let's stick with the B2B SaaS marketer example. If that's you, then the metrics that I would track are going to be net new leads added to your database, right? Are you helping to grow awareness and reach with your target audience? You could look at then just follow that through the funnel, right? If you're adding net new leads, what is the conversion rate from leads to MQLs? And then how many of those MQLs turn into SQLs or opportunities? And then, how much pipeline is created from those opportunities? And then, you could look at a ton of different metrics from there. How fast are those opportunities closing, days to close or average time to close? You could look at average contract value of opportunities or deals where the contacts associated with that opportunity have attended an event, especially in the last, 30, 60, or 90 days. So those are just some of the key metrics that I would recommend tracking first, because then at least you have that full funnel picture of event impact, right? Of, awareness and adding people to your database, getting net new leads, turning those leads into qualified opportunities and pipeline, and then closing that pipeline. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Next question. All right. How can smaller teams start adopting this framework without extra headcount? This is another really great question. So one thing that I want to make sure comes across, event-led growth is not synonymous with just running more events. So scale is important, but first you need to optimize what you're already doing before you start to scale. So I think whatever the size of your team is now, the way that you can start to adopt this framework would be to, one, kind of go back to our 3-part planning sprint, right? And go to steps 2 and 3. So one, look at your current event program and portfolio and ask yourself, how do these events or these programs map to business goals? If you're not really operating in programs yet and you just have like a bunch of one-off events that you host throughout the year, ask yourself, of those events, are there any that we could turn into a program? Meaning, are there any that we could host more than one time a year? Maybe you just start out hosting it, on a quarterly cadence instead of just once, right? And that would be an opportunity for you to pilot developing the muscles for an event-led growth motion with one event program. I always say this too, don't try to spin up 5 net new event programs when you have no programs, right? You don't want to go from 0 to 100 too quick, to quote Drake. But just pick one event, turn that into a program, get your templates and your playbooks, make sure you have the right tech stack, and use that as an opportunity to get your teams aligned so that when you do have the opportunity to either add headcount and, scale the events that you're doing, or if you can lean into, technology to help you scale, like, for example, webinars tend to be an easier program to scale, even when you have limited headcount, when you have the right tech platform, right? So I would say start small. Don't try to boil the ocean. Pick one event, turn it into a program, and use that program. You could even have your little maturity model and kind of go through the different categories. Like, for this program, how are we approaching audience segmentation and targeting? How are we approaching channel and content optimization? What metrics are we going to track? Those are the things that I would kind of go through just for one program at a time. Optimize that program, then you can scale, add more programs once you start to see the fruits of your labor. Great question. Okay, any tips on uniting marketing teams with event teams to improve to a new stage through new project management software? Oh, this is a loaded question. Okay, tips on uniting marketing teams with event teams. I think where I would start, not knowing your situation too intimately, I think probably where I would start is aligning your event teams and marketing teams around shared goals and KPIs. Because even if you were saying, well, our event and marketing teams are aligned, but sales isn't aligned or customer success isn't aligned, I would always say, in any case, start by aligning around shared goals and KPIs. And you could even maybe put that in your project management software. Curious what you're using. But I think that has to be the North Star in terms of how you align people. What are we trying to achieve? Because from there, once you're clear on that and everyone's on the same page around, about what you're trying to achieve through a particular event or event program, then it makes it a lot easier to, just keep people rowing in the same direction towards those shared goals, even if people are, responsible for different parts of the process in terms of getting to that goal. But that's how I would start to unite people, is like, just have an open and honest conversation about making sure people are on the same page about the goals. Great question. Okay. Wow, so many questions. I love it. We could talk about this all day. As a channel owner, I'm recently being asked to collaborate more with the regional marketing manager owners. What is the best approach for aligning early on events in their region? They have typically owned these in the past and are just now collaborating. Okay, great question. So you're the channel owner and you have regional marketing managers who they kind of own the event strategy for their region, if I'm understanding, but you're really the channel owner. So I don't want to sound like a broken record, but again, I would go back to what are the goals for your region, right? I would meet with all of my regional marketing managers or my field marketing managers, and I would say, okay, let's sit down and talk about the priorities and goals for your region or your territory in 2026. What are the biggest needs? What do your reps need as well, right? Because if we work for your regional marketing managers, what's their goal? Their end goal is to empower their regional salespeople, probably, I'm assuming, right? So I would say sit down with them, figure out what the most pressing needs are for those regions, and then make sure you have events that are set up to address those needs and help you accomplish those goals. So that maybe means you're trying to increase engagement within a certain industry, or maybe there's hey, we have a real opportunity. These types of these finance companies that are mid-market, or enterprise are really outperforming. They're closing at a higher rate than other industries in this one region. Or maybe you just have a specific strategy for that region that you need to say, okay, if our goal for this region is X, Y, or Z, how are we having our event programs map to them, A, B, C, right? So it's really just about aligning on goals. And from there, you can work out all the details and the specifics. I hope that helps. Okay. Oh, we have 1 minute left. Any more questions? I think we might not have time for more questions, but I'm an open book. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you ever want to set up a one-on-one and chat through your strategy, I do that all the time. I love it. I'm happy to talk shop any day of the week with you guys. I do want to just have a couple last minute, really one final thing. I hope you found value from this session. I genuinely do. And to learn more about our platform, I know there was a question about, can we talk about technology platforms? The secret is that Cvent really is purpose-built to help organizations unlock event-led growth. So start there. And if you'd like to learn more about how we empower organizations with their event-led growth strategies, and you want to earn a $100 Amazon gift card, you can sign up for a tailored demo with us. Just click the button that just popped up on the bottom of your screen. And just a note to any recipient outside of the US, the gift card can be converted from $100 to another currency available of your choosing. So thank you so much for spending the hour with me. And on behalf of the entire Cvent team, thank you for all that you do to make events matter. And until next time, take care.